Your baby wakes up. No crying, no fussing, no sound at all. And when you look over, they are already watching you, completely still, with an expression you cannot quite read. Not groggy, not adjusting to the light, fully awake, fully oriented, and watching you with the kind of focused attention that makes you wonder how long they have been doing it. And there is something about that moment, the quiet, the stillness, the weight of being watched by someone so small, that stops you in a way that is difficult to put into words. Most parents assume the baby just woke up and hasn't started signaling yet, that the watching is simply a gap between sleeping and needing something, a brief neurological loading screen. But what is actually happening in those quiet watching moments is something far more deliberate, far more sophisticated, and far more important than most parents ever realize. To understand it properly, you need to understand something about how the infant brain moves through sleep and what happens in the transition zone between sleeping and fully waking. Babies cycle through sleep stages far more rapidly than adults, completing a full sleep cycle in roughly 50 minutes, compared to the 90-minute cycles of a mature brain. At the end of each cycle, the brain surfaces briefly into a lighter state, and in those lighter states, sensory awareness begins to return before the baby is fully conscious or ready to signal distress. This is the window, the 2 to 5 minutes where the baby is neurologically awake but behaviorally quiet. And it is in this window that the watching begins. And this is where it becomes interesting, because the watching is not passive. It is the brain running one of its most fundamental and essential startup routines. When the infant brain surfaces from sleep, one of its first priorities is environmental orientation, a rapid scan of the immediate world designed to answer a single critical question. That question is not, am I hungry or am I uncomfortable? Those come later. The first question the waking infant brain asks is something far more fundamental. Is my world still the same as when I left it? This continuity check, confirming that the environment is consistent, familiar, and safe, is a hardwired survival function that operates in every mammalian brain at the moment of waking. In adults, this process happens in milliseconds and below conscious awareness. But in an infant brain, where processing is slower and the world is still being mapped for the first time, it takes longer and shows on the face. The watching face is the continuity check in progress. Your baby is not simply looking at you. They are confirming that you are still there, still the same, and that the world has held its shape while they were gone. Something subtle is happening here. When your baby finds you in that first sweep and locks their gaze onto your face, something in their nervous system settles in a way that is measurable and real. Heart rate stabilizes, cortisol begins to decrease, and the brain receives a neurochemical signal that can be summarized in a single word that every infant is constantly seeking: safe. And the face that produces this response most reliably, the face that the infant brain is most urgently seeking in that first waking scan, is the face of the primary caregiver. Not any face, your face specifically, because the infant brain has already built a detailed neural map of the people who mean safety, and it uses that map every single time it wakes. This is why babies who wake in unfamiliar environments, or whose primary caregiver is not immediately visible, will often begin signaling distress within seconds. The continuity check has failed, and the alarm system activates. But when the check succeeds, when they wake and find you there, and the world matches the map, what follows is not nothing. It is a period of extraordinary cognitive activity that most parents simply do not know is happening. In the minutes after the continuity check completes, the infant brain shifts into what researchers call a quiet alert state, and this is one of the most neurologically active and receptive states a baby ever enters. In quiet alertness, the sensory systems are fully online. The stress response is low, the body is calm, and the brain is essentially wide open, absorbing, cataloging, and processing everything in the environment with remarkable efficiency. Developmental researchers have identified the quiet alert state as the single most optimal window for early learning, more so than any stimulated, actively engaged, or playful state. Which means that when your baby wakes up and just watches you in that quiet, still, slightly uncanny way, you are actually witnessing them at the peak of their daily learning capacity. Every movement you make, every sound you produce, every expression that crosses your face in those minutes, all of it is being absorbed at a depth and a speed that the baby will not be able to sustain once hunger or discomfort begins to signal. At first, this seems almost too significant for what looks like a baby just lying there, doing nothing. But the quiet is not inactivity. It is the outward sign of maximum inward engagement. And here is where the watching takes on an additional layer of meaning that moves beyond neuroscience and into something that feels, when you understand it, genuinely moving. Babies in the quiet alert state after waking are not only learning about the world, they are specifically, preferentially, and deeply focused on learning about the people in it, the face, the voice, the particular way a familiar person moves and breathes and exists in space. These are the things the waking baby's brain is most urgently and most hungrily cataloging. This is not surveillance. It is love, expressed in the only form available to a person whose hands cannot yet reach and whose words have not yet formed. And when you understand that the watching is love, that your baby is spending their most neurologically optimal minutes of the day studying the face they love most, something shifts in how you move through your own morning. In most cases, this quiet watching behavior is completely normal, healthy, and one of the most reassuring signs that a baby's neurological development is proceeding exactly as it should. A baby who wakes quietly, orients successfully, enters quiet alertness, and watches their caregiver with focused attention is demonstrating a working attachment system, a functional sensory processing network, and a healthy stress response regulation system all at once. But if you ever notice the quiet waking changing, if your baby consistently wakes to distress without any quiet window, or if the watching gaze becomes persistently glassy and unresponsive to your presence, those are patterns worth discussing with your pediatrician. Not because either of those things necessarily signals a problem, but because the pattern of waking behavior is one of the most informative early windows into how a baby's nervous system is regulating itself. Now, here is the practical question that follows from all of this, and it is one that most parenting content never quite gets to. What should you actually do when your baby is in this state? The answer is simpler and harder than most parents expect. The best thing you can do during your baby's quiet, alert watching window is almost nothing, done with presence. Move slowly. Speak softly, if you speak at all. Let your face be expressive and warm, and resist the very understandable urge to immediately stimulate, engage, or entertain. Because stimulation, even loving, well-intentioned stimulation, can pull a baby out of the quiet, alert state and into a more reactive one, ending the learning window before it has run its natural course. What your baby needs in those minutes is not more input. They have plenty. What they need is a calm, warm, present human being to point their learning toward. You do not need to perform. You do not need to teach. You do not need to be anything other than yourself, moving through the morning in a way that is calm enough for your baby to study. And this is where it becomes interesting, because the research on what babies actually learn during quiet, alert watching states is not what most people expect. They are not primarily learning facts about the physical world. They are learning emotional grammar, the unspoken rules of how feelings move between people, how faces respond to each other, how the world between two people actually works. Every morning that your baby wakes and watches you, they are building a working model of what human relationship looks like, and that model will shape how they relate to every person they ever meet. Which means that those quiet minutes, the ones that happen before the day really starts, before anyone is fully awake, before anything has been demanded of either of you, may be among the most consequential minutes of your baby's entire developmental year. Not because of what you do in them, but because of who you are in them, and who your baby gets to watch you being when neither of you is trying. So the next time you look over and find your baby already awake and already watching you, before you reach for your phone, before you start the morning routine, before you do anything at all, just pause. Look back at them. Let your face be warm. Let your body be slow. And understand that you are standing in the middle of one of the most extraordinary moments of early human development. Your baby woke up and looked for you first, before hunger, before sound, before anything else. And in that small, quiet, easily missed fact is everything you need to know about how much you already mean to them. That is not nothing. That is the beginning of everything, unfolding in the quietest possible way, in the minutes before the world asks anything of either of you. And here is the question worth sitting with. If your baby's first act every morning is to find your face, what does that tell you about what they already know in the deepest part of themselves, about who you are to them?